Alrighty, so this is the 21st video under the Maybe series and the 15th under valuations. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the mid-year convention for the DCF, right? And let's look at what a traditional DCF looks like first, and then we'll talk about what the mid-year convention is and how that affects our valuations, right? So in a normal DCF, we have our years, right, going up forward for however long we want to project it. We have our cash flow amounts, right, and normally these would be growing, but let's just assume that they're a flat 100. Then we figure out what the present value of these cash flows are. So let's say that our weighted average cost of capital is 10%, right? Well, how do we calculate this? We do 100 divided by 1 plus 10% to the power of 1, right? And this 1 is coming from the year, right? Similarly, we do that same thing for the second year, and we use 2, right? But I want you guys to think about what is the assumption being made by using 1 and 2 over here, and 3 and so on and so forth, right? What's the implicit assumption in this? The implicit assumption is that the cash flow will occur at the end of the year. And how do we come, like how did I say that? Well, it's because we're discounting this cash flow by the full year, right? So if we're discounting something by the full year, we're assuming that that cash flow occurs at the end of the year, and then we're discounting that by the full year, right? So if the cash flow will occur at the end of the year, we're going to discount that by the full year, right? However, in real life, do companies operate like that? No, companies don't actually operate like that. They make cash flows throughout the year, right? So it isn't actually perfectly accurate to say that the entirety of the cash flow will occur at the end of the year and then discount it by the full year. In reality, we should assume that some cash flows come at the beginning, some come at the end. So overall, we should actually assume that this cash flow comes somewhere in the middle of the year, right? So let's look at that scenario. Let's say that we have the same exact situation here, except these cash flows come in the middle of the year, right? So this is the present value of the cash flow. And what happens is if we assume that the cash flows come in the middle of the year, we are going to discount it by half the year, right? So in this scenario, right, we discounted it by the full year because it came at the end of the year. Well, if we're assuming that it comes in the middle of the year, we're only going to discount this by 0.5, and the second one by 1.5, and the third one by 2.5, and so on and so forth, right? So because of that, when we actually run the calculation, we have 100 divided by 1 plus the same 10% to the power of 0.5, right? In the second year, it's going to be 100 divided by 1 plus 10% to the power of 1.5, and so on and so forth, right? So that's essentially what the mid-year convention is, but let's look at how that's going to affect our valuations, right? Well, let's say that we have 100 that's being divided by a really big number. What is that going to result? This will result in a small number. And let's say that we have the same 100 divided by a small number. That's going to result in a big number, right? So then the question occurs, is between this cash flow over here and this cash flow over here, which denominator is bigger? Let's think about it, right? If we raise something, if we raise 100 to the power of 10, right? That's going to give us a, oops, should color code it. It's going to give us a big number, right? If we raise 100 to the power of 1, that's going to give us a small number, right? So we can see that when we raise this cash flow to a smaller number, right, a smaller number, that's going to make our denominator smaller, right? So between the two, I'll write them out here. 100 over 1 plus 10 to the power of 1 versus 100 to the power, divided by 1 plus 10% to the power of 0.5, we can see that this is a big number and this is a small number, right? And if we divide something, the same exact number, by a big number, this is going to result in a small number. And if we divide the same number by a smaller number, this is going to result in a big number, right? So what does that tell us? When we use the mid-year convention, because we're discounting it by 0.5, which is a smaller number, we're going to have a denominator that is smaller, meaning that the actual result will be bigger, right? So we can see that using the mid-year convention will lead to higher or bigger valuations, right? Because each one of these numbers is bigger, plus another bigger number, plus another bigger number. Each one of these numbers is small, plus another small number, plus another small number. This will always be smaller than a bunch of big numbers combined, right? So that kind of is how I think about it intuitively. So we can see that using the mid-year convention will lead to bigger or larger valuations. So overall, I hope that's been helpful, and we'll hop into the next video.